It happened several hours into my playthrough of Pacific Drive. I was on a mission, attempting to navigate while also trying not to veer off the road when, all of a sudden, an enemy popped out of nowhere and attacked me. I took heavy damage, but I managed to survive the encounter and shake off my assailant. With my adrenaline still pumping, I slowed down and parked in a quiet spot. As I got out to check on what was left of my engine, I suddenly had a feeling of déjà vu. It felt like I had experienced this before. Then it hit me. The only game that ever made me feel this way was Far Cry 2. But what does a Ubisoft first-person shooter set in sunny Africa have in common with this dreary, forest-filled survival game that has no combat whatsoever? Well, the answer is a lot more than you might think. Far Cry 2 was a unique game at the time of its release. It came out in 2008, a year after Call of Duty Modern Warfare set a new standard for the first-person shooter genre with its adrenaline-fueled campaign and addictive multiplayer. Its defining features, such as a story mode so linear it was almost on rails, spectacular scripted set pieces and regenerative health, would influence the genre for years to come. Far Cry 2 was an entirely different beast, about as far from Call of Duty as you could get. The game drops you into a war-torn African country, a massive 50 square kilometer open world. There's no minimap to guide you to your next destination. You have to rely on road signs and an in-game map to figure out how to get there. Scripted set pieces are replaced with emergent open-world gameplay. And in this unnamed African country, you can only heal by using health packs, resting in one of the safe houses scattered across the map, or by performing some improvised surgery on yourself. Some of the game's mechanics are unique even by today's standards. In Far Cry 2, your weapons can rust, causing them to jam during a firefight. Your character is also infected with malaria, forcing you to search for medicine to ward off the attacks that can strike at any moment. It also introduced a companion mechanic with real consequences. You can become buddies with mercenaries like yourself. You can do missions for them, and in return they'll come to your aid if you're mortally wounded. The catch is that when they die, they don't respawn. They're gone forever. Unfortunately, Far Cry 2 also has some serious problems that have kept it from becoming an all-time classic.
You a mess, my business looks nasty.
While the game received positive reviews at launch, many complained about how antagonistic the game was towards the player. From the infinitely respawning enemies and lack of fast travel, to the jamming guns and random malaria attacks. Still, in the years that followed, the game gained a cult following. Because, despite its flaws, there's no denying that Far Cry 2 was ahead of its time. Its focus on sandbox gameplay, immersive mechanics, and punishing vulnerability in a hostile world gives us a glimpse of where gaming would be headed over 15 years later, an industry dominated by survival games. Since the release of Far Cry 2, the survival genre has exploded in popularity. Minecraft went from a one-man indie project to the best-selling game of all time, and survival mechanics were introduced in every legendary game franchise under the sun. Fallout has an official survival mode, The Legend of Zelda became a sandbox with cooking and weather conditions that would harm you if you weren't prepared, and Pokémon introduced guns. Or at least we wished it did. At least the real Pokémon now has crafting mechanics, right? Anyway, it is in this context, with survival games at the peak of their popularity, that we come to Pacific Drive. Pacific Drive is a first-person survival game that puts you behind the wheel of a station wagon. You and your car are trapped somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and you must find a way to escape before the Olympic exclusion zone and its supernatural anomalies consume you. Like Far Cry 2, Pacific Drive is very different from other games in its genre. For example, there are no hunger, temperature or stamina bars to keep an eye on. Instead, you have to carefully monitor your fuel gauge, battery meter and tire condition. You also don't have to chop down trees and mine rocks to craft your gear. You get a car to start with, and you need electronics and metal to maintain and upgrade it. And there's no need to worry about building and defending a base, because your home, an abandoned garage, serves as a safe zone, completely free of danger. At the same time, Pacific Drive is much more punishing than other survival games. To advance the story and collect upgrade materials, you must go on runs. These runs are demanding. They take a long time to complete, sometimes more than an hour. You can't return home before activating a warp gate, and if you die or abandon the run, you lose all your loot and are left with a badly damaged car. So you can already see some similarities between Far Cry 2 and Pacific Drive, based on how they compare to other games in their respective genres. But only when we put the two games side by side can we see how Pacific Drive builds on and improves the unique gameplay concepts of Far Cry 2. More than 15 years later, Far Cry 2 is still a good-looking game. It has a fully functional day-night cycle in an open world that you can explore or destroy with a revolutionary fire-spreading system. It helps that its open world has a very unique setting, as not many games let you explore a modern African country. The interesting world makes the simple gameplay loop all the more intriguing. You get a mission from an NPC that directs you to a specific location where you have to complete an objective. Seems simple, right? Well, the catch is that unlike most open world games, Far Cry 2 has no real fast travel to speak of. There is a fast travel mechanic in the form of buses, but this is a very limited system. There exist only a few bus stations in the world, and you first have to travel to one of those stations before you can use the mechanic. Luckily, Far Cry 2 offers a variety of transportation methods. You can walk, but since the game world is huge, that takes a while. You can take a boat, but that's only useful if you're near one of the rivers. You can use a paraglider, but enemies will spot you very quickly and they offer no damage protection. So logically, you'll do most of your traveling by car. They're fast, can go almost anywhere, offer a lot of protection, and spawn at almost every safe house. So, you've secured a car. Now you have to figure out how to get to the next objective, because Far Cry 2 has no minimap, no objective marker to magically point you in the right direction. No, navigation in this game is almost completely diegetic, meaning that your navigation tools, such as your map, are not hidden behind a pause screen, but exist in the game world itself. To know where to go, you have to interpret road signs, follow your GPS, or pull out your paper map. Now, Far Cry 2 still has some quote-unquote magical elements. In order not to make the game too obtuse, your destination is marked on these navigation tools. For example, a road sign pointing in the direction of your destination will be red, and the player can see their orientation on the in-game map, so they don't get turned around too often. Still, this system is a significant departure from the average open world game, especially those made by Ubisoft. You can't just accept a mission, pause the game, open your map and quickly travel there. Traveling in Far Cry 2 requires preparation and thought. Should I travel during the day, when I can see better, or at night, when enemies are less likely to spot me? Should I bring a sniper rifle or a grenade launcher? Which route avoids the most outposts? And so on. This also means that you can't pause the game to check your route. Your map essentially functions as a weapon that you must draw. Are you lost and being chased by some mercenaries? Too bad, you'll have to deal with them before you can reorient yourself. The Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions add another layer of difficulty with their save system. While on the PC, you can save anywhere, on consoles, the player can only save in predetermined locations, such as safe houses and villages. There are also no checkpoints. Dying on the console version means losing all your progress since your last save, which made traveling in the hostile world of Far Cry 2 an even more intense experience. So, travel in Far Cry 2 is a huge part of its gameplay loop. With its diegetic navigation tools, hostile world and limited save system, the seemingly simple task of getting to the next objective requires preparation and skill from the player. And Pacific Drive is no different. Tackling a mission in Pacific Drive begins in the garage, your one and only safe house. Here you can prepare for your next journey by repairing and upgrading your car. You'll need to study the world map carefully, to see which route you can take and modify your car accordingly. Going through a radioactive area? Better install some leaded doors. See a lot of electrical anomalies on your route? Put a lightning rod on your car to capture their electricity and charge your battery. When you've fully outfitted your car, it's time to hit the road. As in Far Cry 2, navigation in Pacific Drive is almost completely diegetic. To see where you're going, you have to look at the passenger seat, where your map is installed. The map provides a lot of useful information, such as where the roads in a level are, whether they are paved or not, and where buildings are located. You can even deduce the altitude of these buildings based on the map's contour lines. Pacific Drive does not feature a huge single map like Far Cry 2. Rather, the Olympic exclusion zone is stitched together with smaller hub levels that, due to the mysterious nature of the zone, are randomized every time. In practice, the zone still functions as a cohesive world. If you want to get to the other side of the map, you still have to traverse the levels in between. Pacific Drive goes much further than Far Cry 2 in terms of diegetic mechanics. To start the car, you have to turn the key and shift into drive. Windshield wipers and headlights are activated with physical levers, which you also have to turn off in order to not drain the battery. If you're wondering, yes, I'm speaking out of personal experience. The radio even has physical buttons to change the frequency and turn the volume up or down. Repairing your car is also much more detailed in Pacific Drive. Each car part can be individually installed or removed, and the repair method depends on the part and how it was damaged. For example, to fix a flat tire, you'll need a sealing kit. Tightening a loose tire, on the other hand, requires a mechanic's kit. And if your tire is blown out, there is no repair method. You'll need to replace the entire tire. You'll have to get used to repairing your vehicle, because the world of Pacific Drive is just as hostile as Far Cry 2's unnamed African country. The Olympic exclusion zone is filled with supernatural enemies known as anomalies, and they can come from anywhere. From the air, from the ground. Some just stand there and move when you're not looking at them. These anomalies can cause massive damage and endanger your run if you're not careful. Because, just like Far Cry 2, Pacific Drive does not have checkpoints. You can only save your game manually in the garage, and dying during a run means losing all your progress up to that point. This is an incredibly punishing mechanic. Losing an hour's worth of progress because you didn't make it to the exit in time feels terrible. And yes, once again, I'm speaking out of personal experience.
You have driven a car before, haven't you? I'm just curious.
But this system also creates the game's best moments. Returning to your safe house is nerve-wracking every time. You have to explore the level, gather energy to open a portal, and then race to it before the world collapses around you. Narrowly escaping death by reaching the war point at the last second gives a rush that not many games can replicate. This feeling is amplified by the way upgrades work. While Far Cry 2 is an ambitious game, it is also a very static one. There's no real sense of progression during its campaign. The world doesn't change, the enemies don't change, the vehicles don't change. You can buy and upgrade weapons, but that's about it. If you play Far Cry 2, Hour 10 won't be much different from Hour 1. This fits with the game's overall theme, the futility of war, but it doesn't make for a particularly compelling gameplay experience. In Pacific Drive, on the other hand, you're constantly progressing. You can upgrade every part of your car, your garage, and yourself. Playing through the story will take you through different biomes, each with its own unique loot and dangers. And with each run, you'll learn a little more about the mysteries behind the Olympic exclusion zone. The loot, upgrades, and story are the incentives that keep you going through the frustrating parts of the game.
Looks like it's ripe for the picking.
And there are many of them in Pacific Drive. For one thing, while the game automatically saves at the beginning of each level, you can't manually save while playing. So if you spend some time thoroughly exploring an area and suddenly have to quit because some real-life stuff came up, you run the risk of losing all your progress. The developers have stated that there are both design and technical reasons for the lack of manual saves, and that this will not change in the future. In the later stages of the game, anomalies become a big problem. Sometimes you'll be forced to travel to levels with tons of enemies that can quickly overwhelm you and wreck your car. And dying means losing the loot you need to repair your car in the first place. Repairs, by the way, also take a lot of time. After a challenging run, it sometimes took me half an hour to fully restore my car and prepare for the next run. The user interface also has its problems. While the UI in the car is almost fully diegetic, on foot you're left with the standard survival game UI, which is disappointing for such an immersive game. The UI is also cumbersome to use, making inventory management more frustrating than it should be. And the many upgrade paths and tech trees can be quite obtuse, forcing you to Google things that are not well explained in-game. Pacific Drive does offer a number of accessibility options that allow you to tweak the difficulty. If you want to keep your loot after dying, or have your car automatically repaired when you come home, there are settings for that. But these settings can't fix all of the game's problems. There's no fix for the lack of manual saves or the clunky interface. And changing these settings also means reducing the stakes of a run, losing much of what makes Pacific Drive so special in the process. Don't get me wrong, despite these frustrations, Pacific Drive is indeed special. Like Far Cry 2 back in 2008, Pacific Drive's diegetic interface, immersive car-based navigation and punishing difficulty set it apart from the competition. Like Far Cry 2, Pacific Drive is a hard game that isn't afraid to push players to their limits. And like Ubisoft Montreal, developer Ironwood Studios has made design choices that will be loved by some and hated by others. But those divisive design choices make Pacific Drive stand out in the crowded survival genre. And it is why I believe it will have a legacy similar to the one that Far Cry 2 now enjoys. Both games are boldly trying to do new things, succeeding on some fronts and stumbling on others. Pacific Drive may be a divisive game, but it was made with a vision, and that is why it will stand the test of time. So, based on this video, you might decide that Pacific Drive is not a game for you, and that's okay. But at the very least, I want you to keep it in mind. Because if at some point in the future you feel yourself growing tired of chopping down trees, mining rocks and building a base in the latest flavor of the week survival game, Pacific Drive will still be there, just as unique as it is today and ready for you to get behind the wheel and drive. Don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it and let me know what you think of Pacific Drive in the comments. If you're interested in more indie games, check out this video of the 10 best games you've definitely missed out on last year. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.